John,
Angie.
I just had a really difficult coaching call.
Ooh, was your client difficult?
No, my coach really challenged me, got me feeling a little uncomfortable.
Oh, you're coaching with a coach. I didn't know you had a coach.
Oh, yeah, for, I don't know, a decade now. Why? You don't have a coach?
Well, I've had some really influential mentors over the years in my career, and I do wonder now if I should hire one.
I'm going to say I am a firm believer that even coaches need coaches. So let's go deeper into this for our listeners today.
I'm with you. Let's start the show.
Awesome.
Welcome to the Coaching Clinic with John and Angie, the show for professional coaches that explores the ins and outs of coaching, from working with clients through to running and marketing your coaching business.
If you're a professional coach who's committed to your own personal and professional growth, cares about making a difference, and wants to have a successful coaching business, you're in the right place.
My name's John Ball.
And I'm Angela Bezignano.
Between us, we have over 50 years of coaching experience and best practices to share with you. From getting started to scaling up your business.
We know what works and what doesn't, as well as what it really takes to have a successful and thriving coaching business.
With new episodes every Wednesday.
Make sure you're subscribed to get them fresh. So, yeah, this is a big question. I think there's a lot of people that might believe that because they are a coach, they don't need a coach. So let's start at baseline. What are your thoughts on it?
My thoughts have evolved over the years. And here's the thing. For several years, for a bunch of years as a coach, I didn't have my own coach.
Mm-hmm.
And the main reason for that was the expense of hiring a coach. I joined some programs where I'd get a coach here again. I was never very impressed with the coaches that I worked with.
Yeah.
I needed a standard of coach that I couldn't afford at that. But when I could afford to get a good coach, I did. And I would say that was transformative. And I have several coaching friends where we now exchange coaching with each other. And that works really well for us. So I have had coaching from coaches paid and exchange, I guess, for over 10 years.
That's awesome, though. I love that you even pointed to that. So I'll go backwards a little bit. My first coach was actually when I started incorporating speaking into my coaching practice. And having gone through that experience, I wish that I had done it sooner. Like, I wish that I had taken advantage sooner. And like yourself, when I did inquire, if somebody I knew was working with, and honestly, it was like a business coaching kind of a situation. I wasn't with back then the life coach, which was very big in like the late 90s into the early 2000s. That was what people were really doing. But I do it like yourself. When I heard the numbers, I was like, what? That's a lot of money to do what? But then when I decided I wanted to incorporate speaking into my coaching practice, for some reason, I thought that, this will be so easy breezy. I've got all of these clients under my belt. I can go back to, it was not so easy breezy. And I was fortunate that I actually chose somebody who wasn't afraid of me. He said, he wasn't afraid to challenge me.
That's important. Yeah.
I'm sure we just wondered. He did not care about my sass or my, he just didn't. And he was awesome. I had him as a coach for so many years until he retired out. So I'm just across the board a believer in having that coach, right? Having person.
Me too. Let me share something with you. Very unfair to my earliest coaches, I think. I was very unfair because I had high expectations. And I'm not saying I compare them to myself. I'm not that egotistical. I just had high expectations of them. And I expected them to be able to pick up on stuff that was going on with me or to dig deeper on things. And they just didn't. And it may have been a bit unfair of me because I was not as cooperative with them as a client as I could have been.
Okay. I can understand that because you're almost So let me ask you before I was going to finish the statement, but let me ask the question before I make the statement. So do you feel like you were in a consistent flow of, instead of being in the moment of the session with them, that you were focused on what they were or were not doing rather than the actual, instead of you, the focus was on them from your perspective?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I felt that if I had just given what I knew was a bullshit answer to them, that they should have called me on it.
You
And it
intentionally do that? It sounds like you did. Okay.
maybe, yeah, maybe.
Oh, okay. And listen,
Yeah, I did.
all right. So I'm going to say, I think, if I'm being honest, as you're saying that and we're just giggling about it, I think I probably have done that. Not
Testing them
so
out,
much,
right? Not to be
yes.
mean, but yeah, testing them out.
Well, almost like this. I mean, I think learn from anybody at any time. And that was an evolution for me. And not that I was egotistical, right? To go exactly with what you said. But I definitely had people who were mentors. So these were people that didn't hire me. And somebody might say, oh, Angie, we coupled you with this person. We partnered you with this person. You're going to learn so much. And after 2 days, I was like, this is BS. I am not learning anything. I am babysitting. So the point that I'm making, and I think you are too, is that if you are a higher level person or you are a higher level, if you've already got some experience as a coach, not that you couldn't learn from somebody who has less experience than you, or I'm not saying that wouldn't be fair. However, my belief is that you really need somebody who's got great experience, more than you maybe. Or maybe it's even in a different arena than you're used to, so you're learning something new. But they have to know how to be able to handle you.
Yeah,
And to that point, some of my toughest clients are coaches.
yeah,
So it's almost like I don't think it changes the answer to the question, which what we're talking about is, do coaches need coaches? I say, why wouldn't we? Right? Don't assume that because you're a coach that like you've arrived and now it's all good for you, because we're still
yeah.
people.
Well, look, I'd say this as well. In more recent years, when I have been able to work with some higher level coaches, where I've been able to
Mhm.
afford to pay to work with them, sometimes in group, sometimes in one to one. It has really advanced me, not just as a person, but as a coach as well. That has been incredibly high value for me developing. It's like when you surround yourself with people who are at a higher level than you, when you have a coach who's at a higher level than you, get pulled up from the top.
I love, and yes, and that's the point. The point is, could you learn from somebody with lesser experience? Or yes, you can.
Yeah, and I
However, I
have.
think, yeah, I think when you just said it, I love how you illustrate it, pulling you up from the top rather than somebody who's under you trying to push you up and trying to give you like one or two little tidbits. That's probably not going to be your ideal person and would not be money well spent, to be honest. I think the idea is also too, if you want I've had countless clients ask me before they hired me, do you have a coach, Angie? And not being able to say yes was a little uncomfortable, and
Mm,
nobody really challenged me on it, but I had to take pause and say, wait a minute, they're asking me this, and I'm not sure exactly why, because I never said, well, why do you want to know? I just, answered the question and we moved on. But it's so much easier. How do I endorse something if I'm not doing it? How do I tell somebody, a client, like how important coaching is and how valuable it is and what an investment it is, right?
yeah,
Instead of a cost, it's an investment if I'm not doing it myself. So I think it was more too realizing that walking my talk was very important to my clients. They wanted to kind of test how I really believed in that whole concept. So now when I say, yeah, every time I talk to John, by the way, I'm being coached, just so you all know.
Well, I get the same privilege with you. But I'd say there have been times in my life where I've had multiple coaches for different areas. Like I've had a coach that I've worked with on my personal stuff. I've had a coach that I've worked with on professional stuff. I had a business coach, a marketing coach, a personal coach.
Yes. Yes.
It's
Yeah.
like at the same, not the same, exactly the same time. They were all hired around the same time, and I was working with all of them during the week, and that was great to a degree. It's a lot. It's a lot to do. I try and keep to just one, but I find having worked in coaching companies for a period of time made it very easy to find those people who I thought, oh, I could work with you. That was really
Absolutely.
that
Yeah.
was really helpful as well.
Much easier to vet people that way. And I think so. I think too that's important to bring it up that when you and I began coaching, it really was like a life coach or a business coach scenario. That it was really one or the other. It's only in the last 20 some odd years that it's become more diverse. I call it murky, but diverse because you can get a business coach that specializes in X, Y, or Z. I mean, it really gets layers and layers deep now, which is fine. But the point is that you can get a marketing coach, right? You can get somebody to teach you how to articulate if you wanted to. So I think that grown, and I think that I'm going to go back to something you said earlier. I am much better for it. Even though I hired somebody officially because I wanted to get out of my own, I didn't know what I wanted. I knew I needed something, but I didn't know what I really needed. And his name was John, by the way. And he was like 3 months in, I was resisting and he finally called me out. He was like, do you want to keep this relationship or not? And I was like, what do you mean? What do I want to keep this relationship? And he's, well, because he was consultant as well. It wasn't just coaching. And he was like, because you
Yeah.
don't want to change anything. He said, so I'm just curious. Do you want to be a speaker? Do you want to, just keep doing what you're doing, which is fine. And I'm like, well, of course I hired you to help me do this. He goes, okay, well then just do it. Like he goes like this. He's because if not, I'm divorcing you. And I was like, I don't know, this guy. And at first I'm going to say I was a little put off because again, he had really strong energy. And then like for the following week when I had to give him my answer, I was like, you're right. Whatever you need for me to do, I'm going to do. He's like, just give me 3 weeks. Or I'm sorry, 3 months. Give me 3 months. Do it this way. And let's see what happens. What's the worst that can happen? And I was like,
Right.
okay. And but guess what? That was a very pivotal moment because that was the moment where I allowed myself to be vulnerable. I'm not really good at it or wasn't really good at it. And I had to put my full trust in him and it worked. So lucky for him, I told him, I'm lucky for you, this is working. But that became the dynamic of our relationship. But he really, when I say he moved that needle, like far beyond what I even envisioned as an expectation, that was like a big, huge moment. And I probably helped him retire because I referred so many people to him that I think that I was the reason. I told him he was a young guy. I'm like, you are retiring because of me. And I know it. So I think the point of that whole Haas story is that if you decide you are going to take on a consultant or a coach to help you with your business or with your own growth, you have to, even as a coach, you have to allow that vulnerability and get out of your own way. Like instead of
Yeah.
looking at what are you doing? What are they doing? They should have done this here. Get into that role.
Yeah. I mean, I think this easily could have been an incredibly short episode where we both said, do coaches need their own coaches? Yes. Episode done. But it's good. I think it's still important to get into why this matters and what's important about this. Here's a question for you. If you were hiring a coach for yourself today, would you ask them if they have a coach? Would that be one of your qualifying questions for them?
Yes. Yes, it definitely would.
I think so too.
Well, let me ask you then, why? What would be your reason behind asking that question now?
It relates partly to what you said about, are you really valuing coaching if you don't have your own coach?
Mm-hmm.
And how important do you see coaching as being in people's lives if you don't even have your own? So that's a big part of it. but also nobody should really be in a position where they don't think they could improve or that they have all the answers themselves.
Mhm.
We all need a bit of external help, but I don't care if I say, have you got a coach and it's your public speaking coach or it's your marketing coach or whatever. I just want to know that you have someone who's helping you to reach a better version of you in whatever area that you're working on.
Yeah, I think that the difference, I think what has changed for me is at that time back then, when I, of course, so 2008 was when I started incorporating speaking into my coaching practice. Back then, it was very one to one, and this person was going to help me. It wasn't just the business. There was a few things. There was a lot of things. I think now for me, when I hire anybody, it's for a specific, as I guess I referenced earlier, it's for a specific space within my world now. Because what do?
Yeah.
I coach, I podcast with you, right? I'm putting mastermind. You and I are doing other things. And
Yeah.
there's literally, for each space that you go into as a coach, there's a specific professional that could help you with that. I don't think it's
Oh,
the
yeah.
overall now.
Really important. I would
Yeah.
not hire a generalist coach. I
Yeah.
wouldn't hire a generalist life coach. I wouldn't hire a generalist business coach. I just wouldn't. But there
Yeah.
was a time when that's all there was, as we
Right.
both know and have experienced on both sides. So yeah, I would work with specialist coaches or people who have at least niched down. And I said this often on the calls, mainly because I know that we're going to have listeners who are ICF certified or going through that
Mhm.
certification, who are like, that's not coaching, that's consultation. Yeah, we know that. But the reality of a coaching practice is you are not going to be doing pure ontological coaching for your
Correct.
coaching lives. Good luck to you. If you manage that and you can make it work, great. But most times that's just not realistic. You end up having some level of consultancy in there as well.
Listen, I think anybody who's been a coach for more than, say, 15 years has realized, and then listen, and if you have defied this statement, we'd love to hear from you. But I think that most people that I know that have been coaches for more than 15 years, your perspective has had to evolve because not everybody nowadays, they're not looking for that one-stop shop. I have a saying that I preach it. I probably have people that I've coached in biz that are business people that are probably using this phrase even in their own practices. No matter what you're doing, I think everything does come back to life coaching, the person, the human element of it,
Yeah.
because you don't have like business problems. Here's my statement. You have personal problems that show up in your business. That's what it is. Is it whatever that may be? That's where that coaching piece comes in. Is there some consultant space like, hey, let's talk about your marketing, right? That's very specific. And you can't help but have that pop up. So to sit here and think, I would hate to say to somebody at this point, I really just can't do anything with you on that. You need to get somebody else. That does, I think, feel a little like overwhelming and daunting to people. So having some expertise and being able to share that, I think can be relevant and very important and up your value with a client.
Yeah. And that is it's different to telling them what to do. We're not suggesting you do
Yeah.
that. It's really being able to share some of your journey with them. I do feel my experience of coaching is that all the different elements of coaching, if you have long-term coaching relationships, will ultimately enter in the ontological, the questioning approach, the consultative approach, the
Yeah.
mentoring approach. All those elements will come into it on some level, but it's
Mhm.
not going to be the case of, all right, well, you come onto your call and I'm going to tell you at the end of the call what you should be taking action on.
Right.
And that's what you're going to do. No, it's more of a collaborative process where you
Yes.
may actually find, no, if someone's struggling to come up with some action steps for the week, okay, how about this? You might actually suggest something if it's appropriate in the situation, the relationship. Or here's what I did. Could that be relevant to you? Or is there a version or does that make you think of something that you might want to do? All that stuff can be really helpful. And it's not really just asking questions at that point. It is more like there's a bit of leading going on as well.
Yeah. Which John did with me about 3 weeks ago. Just wanted to tell everybody. All of a sudden, his whole voice changed. And he went from having a conversation to going, well, let me ask you. And I was like, uh-oh, that's different. But I'm teasing. But anyway, but it does happen. And I think that it does depend on the relationship you have with that particular client, because there are people who have that expectation, especially if you're selling a framework. Like if you are working within a framework, I think that people that come to you for coaching are looking for a little bit more guidance than help me dig my way out. So I think finding that balance is really important and relevant, because things have changed. The landscape has changed so much.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like, let's say it's a good thing for a coach to create a framework. I think we may have talked about that before.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
And so if you have that and somebody comes to you and you say, well, I'm just going to ask you questions, other than talk about stuff that's in the framework or just ask them questions that relate to that, I think they're going to feel a bit put out. They're going to feel a bit like you're holding back on them because you actually have knowledge and information to share with them. And I get that there's a battle going on sometimes. You think, as a coach, you shouldn't be the person who's doing most of the talking on the call.
Right.
That's what we know.
Agreed.
And yet there are times where you might be.
I
where
agree.
you might be doing more of the talking.
It just depends on what's happening in the moment, because there were times where I've been like the person doing most of the talking, and I acknowledge it. I say it out loud. Hey, you know what, John?
Yeah,
I know today I'm doing a lot of the talking. Here's why. And I'm not, are you picking up what I'm laying down? I don't talk like that's been my clients, but I make sure.
I'll get it.
But I make sure that they understand. The other thing I wanted to point out, and I think you and I talked about this, because there are things that I tell in my discovery call with a prospective client, not after they sign the contract. I tell them there are basically 2 areas that I will not coach them on. One of them is on finance, right? And the other is on health and wellness. But I mean in terms of nutrition and exercise, because I have my own coaches there. I have had my own trainers there. A lot of people come to me, and not as much in the financial area, but believe it or not, it comes up, but more in that, not in energy, because we know I do energy work, but in that diet and exercise, nutrition and exercise. And I tell them, if you need help with that, you need to go talk to a specific professional. I'm here to deal with what's going on between the years. That's what I'm here for. But what I've done is I've even put it on my website. These are resources for people. If you want this and you need this, these are trusted resources, trusted people that I've worked with personally, that I trust, and I feel confident in referring you, but I cannot help you there. That's it. Cannot do it. So I set that right from the beginning, because I've had people come in and go, well, I just really need somebody to help me get on point with my nutrition and my act. And I'm like, are we talking habitually, or are we talking, you want me to tell you how many proteins to eat a day? Both. I'm not your girl. I'm not the person for you.
Most of my coaching life has been business related coaching. So that hasn't very often come up for me. Although some people do know, I'm going to obviously say this now, but that I have for about 10 years or so been teaching a financial freedom program for another company.
If you all could see me, no, right. Nobody can see me right now, but I literally just did a Scooby-Doo with my ears up. I was like, huh? I've known John for a long time, and this is the first I'm hearing of this.
So it goes through, it's like an 8-week program that goes through things like the foundational elements of money management, and there's actually a system and process to get people to follow. And then 4 weeks of talking about how to set up investment things and stuff like that, and how to accelerate the journey to financial freedom. Great. I do this for another company because they taught me how to do it, and I'm teaching their stuff. It's not my stuff. It's not my general preferred area of coaching, the financial stuff.
Mm.
I much prefer the business, but I do generally, when I work with some private clients from them, I end up working with them on business stuff. It would be like either business investments or starting up their own business. I much rather do that stuff. So I don't really have to have those conversations very often about, well, I would probably say, here's the areas that I don't really want to work with you on.
Mm.
I'm not a health coach. I don't, like, I can maybe give you some coaching on that, but it's not my area. I'm not a relationship coach. I don't really want to get into all of that stuff, but it doesn't mean you can't bring it up on the calls. So I'm not a spiritual coach. I have nothing really that's going to be particularly helpful to you in that area, depending on what you do or don't believe in. But I've never really had to have that conversation.
Interesting. And listen, and I want to say this. So even if, to your point, like it didn't always come up for me where somebody specifically asked, it did happen, which made me say, okay, I need to tell them this in the very beginning. But what I did find is that through the process of coaching, that maybe some of those things were very big challenges for the client, whether it was their
Mm.
health, they were overweight, they didn't feel pretty, they didn't feel healthy, they were financially throwing money at the game, they were gambling, they're just not, they're 70 and they never saved and they're eating cat food. Okay, some of those were an exaggeration, but they were the truth. It was things that would come up as major pain points for that client. And
Yeah.
I'm like, it's not even that I don't want to. And I'm not running out to go get some like pretty little, cute little letters at the end of my last name to say that now I'm a nutritionist or I'm a, health coach in any way. I don't want to do that. I would rather hand them to somebody that I know has been doing something for a longer time and has specific expertise in that. Not me, that
I
I
would
could
do
say
the
to them,
same, I
oh,
think.
Weight Watchers worked for me, but I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
That's not really the
No,
thing.
no. I got asked to do some transition coaching for people who were being relieved of their employment, which I was back in the UK some years ago. And I turned it down. I didn't really want to do it. And it's not that I couldn't have done it. I just didn't really want to. And it didn't feel like my area. And
Well,
I was focused on other things at the time. So
yeah.
yeah, I turned that particular opportunity down. It could have been quite lucrative, I know, but that's not the only reason for doing or not doing stuff. Here's a question
Sure.
for you though.
Oh, yes. I'm listening. I'm ready. I'm
You
ready.
ready for my question?
I am.
If you could have anybody as your coach,
Oh,
who who would you choose?
so you're saying like obvious, like big names.
Could be.
Just think for a second because you caught me in, ooh, if I could have anybody, I know you're not going to like my answer. But
Me?
but I have a
Me?
very, well, listen, I get you anyway. You are like, you're my friend and my coach. So check that box. But I think that I've always followed the more like, what's the word I'm looking for? Not the stronger, but like I've never followed the softer coaches.
You like the
So
direct approach and
yeah, I think I've always been attracted to the more direct, but I think if I could sit and be coached over the long term with somebody, I'd probably pick somebody like Jay Shetty. Don't come at me, but here's why. Because because I feel like that's an area for me to maybe soften it and look at things from a different perspective. So it would probably just off the cuff would be either him or even Brene Brown. Even though she's a little direct, she still has that softer side. So I could probably learn a lot just in how they interact with me, not even in what the actual coaching session brings about.
Mm. Interesting. No judgment from me. I have no idea what Jay Shetty or Brené Brown would be like as one-to-one coaches.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to hear that experience from someone who had that. But
Hey, Jay,
interesting.
calling Jay Shetty. Are you listening? Sorry.
He's probably not. Or maybe he's decided he wants to learn how to coach properly, and he knows. Maybe he's listening in. I've mentioned the name of the person who I would choose before on the show, and it would be Carrie Wilkerson. I've worked with her before, and I think she's an amazing coach. She's a coach to one of our mutual friends, at least one of our mutual friends, I think. and she's an incredible person. So I've worked with her in a group setting. I would love to work with her one-to-one, and my intention is very much that I will at some point in the future, but I'm not there yet, but I will.
Wow. Something else I didn't know about John today. All of this information. Well, I mean, I think we can agree, though. Here's the bottom line. I think you and I both agree that it's really important as a person and as a business professional, even though our arena is coaching, to remain open. And even if you're not coaching constantly, because I did it over a period of years consistent. But then when he retired, I took a step back for a minute and then I come in and out of it. I am also, like you mentioned, surrounded by more coaches that are from different spaces. So I am able to utilize them, but I'm still coaching. I will still even call them and say, hey, I have a question. What are your thoughts on this? So I still feel like I'm in that space of learning more of what I don't know yet. I think that's important. So I think it would be a disservice to their own person if they said, oh, well, I don't want to coach. I don't know anybody who would say, I don't need a coach. I never want to coach with anybody.
Yeah. I like the idea, silly as this may sound, I like the idea of having a coach who is not just going to be an easy yes. They're going to make me work for it.
Yeah. Well, listen, but that's because you've evolved, right? Like you've evolved. You know the value of that. That's why you would seek it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
No, it's a super fascinating topic. I really enjoyed this. It's been a fun chat. We've brought up already in this episode about speaking for coaches. I think it's come up a few times. Let's maybe hit that next time for our topic, yeah?
Sure. Absolutely. Bang, bang. Love it.
Sounds good. Well, for now, if you're a coach who hasn't got your own coach, maybe have a think about whether that could be a good idea. Probably is. And if you want some advice on that, or if you think one of us would be a great coach for you, get in touch. You can find us on LinkedIn. And if you just got some feedback or you have some comments around some of the stuff we've been talking about today, leave us a voicemail. Go to speakpipe.com/the Coaching Clinic podcast. It's free to do. And we might just feature you on, well, who are we kidding? We will definitely feature you on the show. So have a great week, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Bye for now.